Hello, everyone. I hope you're well. Today, I'm talking about the tricky topic of anger, frustration, irritability, but primarily anger. So, it's tricky because there's a lot of shame and guilt associated with it. But today, I'll talk about the underlying cause of it being anxiety and fear. And the reason why I'm doing this video today is because if you do a lot of work to release the anxiety, to deal with the fear, as I describe in all my other videos, that will go a huge part of the way in either dissolving much of your anger, reducing it, or making it much more manageable to be aware of and potentially control or not be led astray by it. So the first thing to say is that it is completely normal. Anger, frustration, irritability, it's all part of being human. And one of the first things we need to do, if this is something you experience often, is just to acknowledge it. We all get angry, men, women. Women are probably better at talking about it and maybe releasing it. Not all, of course, than us men, but often as men, we repress it and then it just builds in intensity and is expressed more extremely. So we want to ensure that we just acknowledge it's part of being human. It's not wrong per se, but it can be really unhelpful if we don't deal with it. And the reason why anxiety and fear is a huge part of it is because what we're talking about is the flight or fight response, or the flight, fight, or freeze response, the stress response, which is at the heart of anxiety. You're tired, fatigued, overworked nervous system. But specifically with anger, we're talking about the fight aspect. So anger, or helpful anger, is often thought of as aggression. So if I'm being chased by a vicious animal, a tiger, a vicious dog, one of the mechanisms we have at our disposal as human beings in order to survive the physical threat is aggression. And sometimes aggression is useful, so we might put on an aggressive stance in order to deter the threat. So aggression per se is not bad. It can obviously be very unhelpful in a lot of circumstances, but the emotion behind that is anger. When we start to take things personally, and instead of using it as a practical mechanism in these physical threat situations, we react with anger in everyday life to things that frustrate us because our nervous system, our flight or fight response, is giving us all this adrenaline, which gives us energy, the surge of stress hormone cortisol, which again gives us energy in order to take action. So, if we understand at the heart of anger is an overactive, tired, fatigued nervous system that's putting us into fight mode just with everyday worries and challenges. I didn't get that job at work, so now I'm angry. The kids didn't do what I say, so now I'm angry. I didn't get that text message back, so I'm angry. We just need to acknowledge that we've learned over time that our default flight or fight response is skewed towards fight. And once we can recognize that, start to understand it, we can maybe take a bit of the blame away from ourselves and then start to unwind the process. So again, if your default response is anger, all that's happening is that the tired, fatigued nervous system is responding to everyday situations as though there's a physical threat. Of course, the ego comes in. So the ego is your protective part of the personality that makes us selfish. Again, good to be selfish and focus on yourself. If there is a car coming towards you at 100 miles an hour, so you can take action. But the problem is the ego comes in and treats everyday situations that don't require this extreme response as though there is some physical threat. We learn it from a young age. We are learnt that if we don't get into university, we're not good enough. Or we do a trade, we're not good enough. If we don't get, A's on our exams, we're not good enough. If we don't get married, we're not good enough. Whatever it might be. And that can then express in anger if we don't, because if we feel there's something wrong with us for not achieving certain things in life, for behaving a certain way, for earning a certain amount of money, it doesn't matter what the reason is, then we learn anger is the response that's going to drive us to achieve it. But of course, we know now, with all the work that I'm doing on this channel, other resources you may have, that anger is ultimately unhelpful outside of this sort of narrow focus of aggression in appropriate physical threat responses. So we just have to be, number one, be aware of it, and then use the methods and the tools I talk about in my videos. Take a breath when we become aware of it, slow everything down, calm the nervous system. Because if we don't see that the anger is ultimately unhelpful and we can't admit it, we tend to repress it. We tend to look for other things to blame, other people to blame. But what we can do is start to really relax the nervous system over time, slow down, as I describe in other videos, in order to dampen down that flight or fight response. So as soon as we become aware of it, we know what we need to do. We can change our default response from being following through on this aggressive anger-fueled action, sending that nasty text message, making the aggressive phone call, the phone call in anger, responding to an email in anger, shouting at someone in anger. It might be just your internal dialogue is angry, so we can stop that as well. So we just, again, we want to be aware of it, acknowledge that we're all human, acknowledge where it's becoming unhelpful so we can start to dial it back, reach out for support if you're really in an angry situation at the moment and it's too overwhelming for you. Call a helpline, seek professional support to help you talk through it, but primarily use the methods, slow down and soothe and calm the nervous system over time. And to my mind, if we understand that anxiety and fear is the heart that's driving anger, fear of missing out, fear of not being good enough, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. We can learn that we don't have to be consumed by our anger and follow through on whatever it's trying to tell us to do. So I hope that helps. I'll do more videos on it, but I just wanted to put that out there as a starting point. If you have any questions, please let me know, but I hope to see you online again soon. Take care.